Hello and welcome to Document Seekers, and we are going to explore something so fascinating that happened in the early 1900s. My name is Abraham.
And my name is Jonah, and we are going to dig deep into the topic of women's suffrage and tell you what happened and when it happened throughout how women gained civil rights.
Women's suffrage is how women did not have the right to vote and were not able to get jobs and or have the same rights as men. We are going to explain how women got the right to vote.
This all began in the mid-19th century. Several generations of women's suffrage supporters lectured, wrote, marched, lobbied, and practiced civil disobedience to achieve what many Americans considered a radical change in the Constitution guaranteeing women the right to vote.
This cause would also eventually succeed in allowing women the right to vote in the United States, and it also passed by Congress June 4, 1919 and ratified on August 18, 1920.
The 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. The 19th Amendment legally guarantees American women the right to vote.
Many protesting suffragettes were arrested for law breaking, and many went to prison. In further protests, suffragists would go on hunger strike to stop eating in prison.
To stop them from becoming ill, they would often be held down and force-fed by prison staff in a particularly unpleasant procedure. And here is a question Abraham is going to ask you.
Why did so many states deny women the right to vote? Because they took care of the home and children. They said women did not have the right to vote or stay updated on politics. Some argued women lacked the expertise or mental capacity to offer a useful opinion about political issues. Why was women's suffrage legal in some states?
In 1869, Wyoming Territory granted women the right to vote, motivated less by gender equality and in large part by the hope that the law would attract women to the territory, which had a 6:1 men to woman ratio.
Enlightenment concepts, socialism, and abolitionist movement helped the U.S. suffragists universalize women's rights long after Seneca Falls.
They drew their inspiration not only from the American Revolution, but from the French and Haitian revolutions, and later from the Mexican and Russian revolutions.
Accordingly, the National Women's Suffrage Association was formed in 1869 with the declared object of securing a ballot of women by an amendment to the Constitution.
Anthony and Stanton were the leaders of this organization, which held a convention every year for 50 years after its founding.
For many years, women couldn't own property, and they had to give any money they made over to their husbands. They also weren't allowed to vote by the mid-1800s. women started to fight back, demanding rights such as the right to vote.
These women were called suffragists. As of the 20th century, the women began to have their own money, their own houses, and property. And now, finally, after all the hardship and suffering, they finally have the right to vote.
The reason why they wanted to start voting was described during the Seneca Falls Convention. The event in Seneca Falls, New York drew over 300 people, mostly women. They wanted to be treated as individuals, not dependents of men.
They wanted more employment and education opportunities. They wanted the option to run for office, speak in front of Congress, and vote. And here are some of the key events that happened during the women's suffrage movement.
The 19th Amendment did not fulfill all its supporters' hopes because the women took care of the home and the children. They said women did not have time to vote or stay updated on politics, but it was no failure.
It brought the nation closer to universal suffrage and made the injustice of ongoing disfranchisement even less defensible. It expanded opportunities for women to govern, and it changed the direction of public policy.
Another study found a link between women's suffrage in it, and some studies found that as of American women gained the right to vote in different parts of the country, child mortality rates decreased by up to 15% in the United States, and with it increased spending on schools and an uptick in school enrollment.
The main turning point in women's suffrage is when Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony started to fight for women's rights and getting the women a right to vote. And that's a turning point for history because women felt like prisoners until they got the right to vote and do things like own properties, make decisions for themselves, and get their own jobs.
Through determination and perseverance, in 1920, the United States Congress had granted the women the right to vote. It was the first step in a long journey for women to have the same rights as the man. And don't forget to subscribe to Jack Bad Key.